Hi everyone, welcome to our grammar class today, and we are going to focus on Chamaeleon prefixes and Latin roots. So Chamaeleon prefixes came about around the 1920s, where we had Samuel Orton and Anna Gillingham. They came together to try to help people read, especially children. They really wanted to help children to be able to read and understand their vocabulary and their words. And so they came up with the Chamaeleon prefixes. So the reason why they call them Chamaeleon prefixes is because these prefixes can go on several different roots. They can bounce around on different roots. So like a chameleon, chameleons can change color to hide in their element to protect themselves. And so we are doing Chamaeleon prefixes to be able to identify your root and help you understand your roots better. And we're going to talk a little bit more about our Latin roots. And the roots that we went over in our last lesson, we are going to feature in this lesson. Okay, so now we have our sections of each individual. So I put them starting out right here. So we have this section starts with con, and the reason why they put con as the opening is because it can go on several different roots. Not just like this one can only go, or most of the time can only go on roots that start with B's, M's, and P's. This one can only go on roots that start with R's, and this one can only go on roots that start with L's. But this one can go on many other roots. Now, we had in the other lesson what these mean, and so I'm going to have you guys look it up and see if you guys can remember, because I think it will help your memory, and we'll probably maybe listen for it in the lesson a little bit later. So same with dis. We went over this in another lesson. Dis is the main one in this section. We have dis, di, dif. So see how dif only goes on roots that start with an F. This is the main one. It goes on many, many roots. Then we have M, which only goes on B's, M's, and P's. So I think that is so helpful to know. Well, if you can't hear im or in, is it in or im? But you don't even have to guess, because there's a rule for that. They go on roots that start with B, M, and P. See, the same rule. B's, M's, and P's. So we should put that up there. They go on B's, M's, and P's. All right? So, but then IL only goes on roots that start with an L, and IR goes on roots that start with R. Now, this can mean not, or it can mean into, or in. So it has some different meanings in there. So now X goes on, it's the main chameleon for this section. And then we have, and it goes on many different roots. Then we have F, which goes on only the root that starts with an F. And then we have the E. And so you're like, well, which one could that really go on? Well, I think the best way to really hear that is if you're studying your roots, you can see that the root is there. This says X. You can hear X. Now, it also will say, if it's followed by a consonant, it will say X. But if it's followed by a vowel, it will say eggs. And so that will help your spelling. If you remember that X followed by another consonant, then that's how you would spell it. So we don't spell, so see how you can hear the sound. Okay, so boys, what sound does an X make?
K-S.
K and an S. So when you are spelling this, you hear, the last sound that you hear is the S sound, Ks, but you don't spell an S on there because it's on the X. And so that really trips people up. They want to spell the EXS, but you don't do that. So it typically is a consonant that is here if you hear X. So you would spell a consonant. Now, also EX will say eggs. And like this. But we don't spell EGS. Because what causes that sound is if you have a vowel right here. And then, so if you hear eggs, you just spell X and then move on to the next sound that you hear, and most likely it will be a vowel. So now, when you hear X or eggs, you would use that. If you hear E, then you would use this and then your root. But then this one right here goes strictly on a root that starts with an F. Okay, so now X means out of or from. Okay, what does X mean, boys? Out of or from. All right, so now we have the OB section. Now these will go to schwa almost always because they are in the unaccented syllable of a word. So most of the time the root is accented and your prefix turns to schwa. So we have the upside down E symbol, which turns it to schwa, and that says up. What would that one say down? It's a schwa, it's closed. Uck. So this starts the uck. Paul, what would this one say? Uff. Okay, uff. Okay, so now we have up, uck, and uff. And not always will they say those sounds, but most of the time, if they're sitting on a Latin root, they will say those sounds. See how they're all closed syllables, and they were not going to be in the accented syllable, they're going to be in the unaccented syllable, so they're going to say it's schwa sound. When you put them on a root, what's it going to mean? Daniel? Against. And Paul? Toward. So OB, OP, OC, and OF mean against and or toward. Now our next chameleon prefix is ud or ad, whatever, if it ends up being in the unaccented syllable, which most likely it will be. So ud, uck. Now one that's used the most, so we have R goes in R, C goes in C, F goes on F, G goes on G, T goes on T, S goes on S, N goes on N, L goes on L, and AP on AP. Now this can be confusing on some of the when you have uck and uck here. So sometimes you just have to learn your spelling word. That will happen where you hear that same sound, but which one do I spell it with? But sometimes this will say ack, like access. So it just depends on the word. And so also you might have problems with these two because both of these two can say the same sound, and these two. Okay, so now what do these mean? Paul, what do these prefixes mean?
Toward and to send.
Nice. So they have different meanings also. It can be to, toward, or to send. So we are going to go over some Latin roots that we used in our last lesson, and I found a whole bunch of words that will fit in with some of these roots, and we're going to play with these, and it'll be fun to see how these roots work with some of the prefixes. So some of them I don't have prefixes on them. I just wanted you to play with the roots and see how you can spell a little bit better. Now this mid means middle. It's right in the middle, okay? So like medication. So medication is in the middle of you healing. It's helping you heal. Mediagenic, paramedic. See how a paramedic is right in the middle of helping you get better. They're first responders. They're in the middle of all the chaos, okay? Meditate. Media, I actually thought this was really interesting why meta would be the Latin root for media, because if you think about it, media is the middleman from me to wherever the incidents happened. So they're bringing that into the middle so we can actually understand and see what's going on somewhere else where we don't live. Now we have remedies, mediators. Think about a mediator. Do you guys know what a mediator is? Well, if you think about it, meta means in the middle, so a mediator, and OR means a person, so a person who is helping in the middle. Remeta abilities. So look at this one. Here's your root, here's your prefix, which means again, and then you have all of these. 1, 2, 3, and which is really interesting on this one. This is a kind of a knockoff word. Okay, so, but look what happens here. ABLE, able to, that is your suffix. Able to be in the middle. So, but look what happens here. This I is right in front of this L. And when you're adding on the suffix ITY, this actually happens where you have to fix this I and put it in front of the L, and it is no longer a syllable. It switches that up. So I thought that's part of the reason why I put that word in there, because I just wanted to show you how things can get switched up when you're adding on suffixes sometimes. Not very often, but sometimes they do. Medicated, medicined, meditation. So now we have, now look at this. We have meditation. See, meditate. See how we have different suffixes added on this. So basic, kind of the basic meaning, but different because we have different suffixes. Now, medicate, medicated. See, this happened in the past. So we have paramedicals. The para means around, okay? Medina. This is actually a place. What does mit mean? Do you guys remember? Huh?
Like to send.
Nice, Dan. So it means to send. So we have commissioners. Or this is a British way how you say it, and this commissioners, this is the English way, and we're sending commissionaries to represent us, right? So here's your prefix. See how that's how you can figure out your doubling rule. M goes with M, okay? But look at this, the T. Now remember, this is part of your root, this T switches to an S before you add on your S-I-O-N. Same with these. But here it stays, submittal. So you can hear that this switches to shun, but if you hear me, shun, you know that it's going to switch to an S. Mit, if it's keeping its T sound, you know it's going to stay as a T. And then this one would need the doubling rule because it's a consonant, vowel, consonant. Now this is one of the prefixes I didn't put up there. It means smaller or below. And so submittal. Submitter. See, when you're at, it's a thing that submits, right? Submitting, it's progressing. This is, you still need the double T, but we're just adding on our sub, right on. Oh, we have submitted. See, double T. There's your root. Submits. Then see how this isn't a double T. Why isn't this double T? Is not adding on a vowel suffix, you're just adding on a consonant suffix. You only need to worry about the doubling rule if you're adding on a vowel suffix, which all of these are vowel suffix. Okay, we have submittal again. Going to submit your application to something. Submittal, oh, it's going to take a double T and before we add on our vowel suffix. But now look at this. Now we have two prefixes right here. We have means resubmit. You're going to submit it again, okay? Now, readmission. Now look at this. So you have your root. Now you have your Chamaeleon prefix. Now see how add, we have sub, we have add, we have com onto this mit. See, that's the reason why it's called a chameleon prefix, because several different kinds of roots can be put on one typical root. And whatever that root means, so let's talk about that. So AD means what? To, toward, or to. You're going to put readmission. So mit means to send, and add means to, toward something, right? To, toward. We're going to submit it to something, right? Do you guys understand that? Now this one means resubmission. See how this has a lower below meaning. It means, again, resubmission. Okay? How about permission? Has a different meaning. Transmission. Even though it's not sitting as a chameleon prefix, it still go on Latin roots. So trans means across, you're transmitting something across the airwaves. Intermission means between. So like you have an intermission between your play. There's an intermission. Dolomitization. See how you have mit right in here, but you have one, two, have two suffixes sitting right here on this root. So tract means to drag or to draw. Like we have retractors. How about subtracts? Okay, you're going to subtract out numbers off of the other number. It's going to pull it out. It's going to draw it out. Drag out the other numbers. Subtracted. Now, so let's look at this. Right here, we don't double this T because it's not a consonant vowel consonant. We see how this, it doesn't really matter with the just adding your plural S, but it does matter when you're adding on a vowel suffix if you're checking for the doubling rule. So this would be vowel, consonant, consonant. So there's two consonants in a row, you just know you don't have to double it. So you just add on your suffix. So see how this can have multiple suffixes. So subtractive, see how this has another suffix, different. It changes what it does in a sentence. Now, subtract. See how this is your base word. So, and see how you have several different parts on there that you. So now look, contractor. OR means a person in this sense. So a person who puts together a contract. Distract. See how we have a CON on tract, DIS on a tract. See, we have contract here. So contractor. Look at this, extract. What does X mean again, you guys?
Out of.
So if you think of extract, what is that? If you tract means to draw, right? Or drag. So X means to out of or from. So your extract means you're drawing or pulling out a flavor out of something and you're condensing it, like vanilla extract. Okay, so retract, you're pulling something out again. Okay, now we have attract. I think this one's really fun because AT, where is that? Oh, AT is to, toward, or to send. So now look, if we have attract right here, you have tract means to draw, and you want somebody to be drawn towards you or to you. Do you guys see that? How you can understand this word a little bit better than just saying attract. Whatever it means, you're drawing something towards you. Subtractions. See, we have your tract, and then look at the TION. So here is your Latin root, and then shun. Well, that T is no longer saying tract, it's saying traction. So you know it's going to be a TION here most of the time. Mit is an unusual root for it to do that. Most of the time it will just be the TION onto this. Traction. See how it will have different meanings depending on what's on your prefix or your on your prefix or on your suffix. Now remember, your prefixes really change the words huge amounts, and your suffix just kind of changes the words around. They have very similar meanings. Now we have subtracting. So kind of like the same here. See how we have your ing, you just add them on. Contractility. Okay, do you remember what struck means? Ah, Paul, very good. It means to build. Okay, so if you think of an instructor, OR means a person, in can mean, what do we have? Not, into, or in. So we are, if you have an instructor, they're putting information into you, right? This person is putting information into you, and they're trying to build that knowledge or whatever it is. That's what an instructor does. How about structures? Now see, now you have that T is no longer saying T anymore here. It's going to say this unit sound, this chur sound. Now look at this. We have the OB, obstruct, where you have a different chameleon there, but look at this one, instructing, how you have another chameleon. So you're in, so this, like the same thing here, instructor, instructing. See how it's changing? This is progressive. It's moving forward more, okay? This is the actual, right here is the actual person. But this is more of your verb where it's helping you move forward and progress, okay? So instructive, see how this root tells you a little bit, something a little bit more different, okay? A little bit different than what instructing will do. So structures, now you have the actual building, okay? Many buildings, see how you can have your, this one has the plural S. Now construct, now look at this one. Now you're using a different prefix, okay? Construct, and then instruct. Okay, so another Latin root that we are going to focus on is bibble, and it stands for book. So here are a few different words that have bibble into it. So we have bibliographer. Now it's really important that when your words together, so like this is a Greek, and then we have our Latin, and Latin and Greek, they will mesh together. And also we do have Latin connected to our English words and to our French words. They just kind of mesh together, but it's really important that you understand what are your Latin roots and what are your Greek roots, because then you're understanding the depth and the meaning. So bibliographer, when you put your combining forms or your Greek words with your Latin roots, then this oftentimes says og. Okay, so you have to be really careful. We don't say bibliographer. Okay, so that means a person who writes and records
about the Bible.
Well, this person is writing a book. Does that make sense, sweetie?
Okay, because Bible means book.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So now it is the beginning of Bible, because that's the main book everybody had in their possession, right? That's the main book that people had in their homes. Okay, bibliography, see how it changes a little bit when you change the suffix. Post-biblical, bibliographic. Now see how this O changed with this suffix. It's not saying og really strongly. Here, it's really saying og super strongly. This is, it's not. Bibliographic. See how it's saying kind of, it's just saying a little bit different. So be careful when you're trying to pronounce your words. When you're changing your suffix, it will change this vowel sound. Bibliophily. Now, this I think is really interesting, because phil means the love of books. Okay. Bibliolatry. See, so you just have to be careful with your O's. Dict means to say or to speak. Okay, so if you know this, then you will understand these words better. So we're going to go over these now. See how all these will have the root. Now we have your root in here. So T-I-O-N, diction. Now you can't hear that T anymore because you're adding on your unit sound, and it means the state of being. T-I-O-N means the state of being. Add on, it's the state of being predict. It's prediction. So pre means before. Okay, so you're predicting something that happened, that's going to happen before you actually know that it's happening. Predictors, see now how things have changed now. It has the same meaning pretty much, but it's a little bit different because this is the plural S, so it means more than one predictor. It also has your suffix, meaning a person. So it just changes this a little bit. Predicts. There's just with one suffix. Predict. Now it's just coming down to the prefix and your root. Okay, you're just adding on your prefixes, but when you're doing your suffixes, you have to know your spelling rules to be able to add these on properly. Predictively, how are they doing the predictive? Because ly means how. And predictable, you're able to know when somebody is saying something or going to speak something. Now look what happens here when you have a new prefix. It actually changes everything really about what the word means. Okay, so we have add means to order to with your say or to speak. So it's changing things. Now when you're doing your suffixes, it only changes it a little bit in the sentence, but when you are doing your prefixes, it changes the whole meaning. All right? Dictiest. Okay, indicts. Now also, D-I-C-T-S doesn't always say dict. It will say diked sometimes. So be careful with that. Edictal. It's changing the meaning here of this, of really what the word's going to be. Addict. Have your suffixes on there. But look, dictate. Somebody's saying something and it's being written down. Edict. It's changing. Dictation. It's a state of being written down as it's being said. Indict. This means not into or in. Verdict. Okay, somebody's trying to decide if what this person is saying is correct or what they believe is right. Okay, dictations. See how somebody's saying this and it's being written down. Indictable. See how it changes with this prefix. Able to not indict or into indict. Okay, going to be not, into, or in when you're trying to decode the word and decipher the word and figure out the meaning. So, unpredictable. See how this changed to not. Un means not. Okay? But it's changing. So if I took un out, it's you're predictable. Now un is like, no, you're not predictable. It's the complete opposite. Okay, so contradictory. See how con now completely changed the meaning of what's going on here with dict. So we have prefixes up there at the top where I didn't write, but that's what it means. It means with or together. Now, to help you understand what the rest of this means, so this means to speak or say. And tra, I thought this was really interesting and important for you to know. So we have the prefix right here. Tra is a prefix, boys. It goes along with contradict. Okay, and it's a variant of trans. So do you guys remember what trans means? Yeah, it means across.
Oh.
Cross or through. Can that be seen really well? So if you can remember, like how I can always remember trans is if you think about transcontinental. So it's taking you across the continent, and you will see that in airlines and different things. So if you can remember tra is a variant of trans, then you're going to remember it's going to be across or through, like transatlantic. So that's how you can help remember tra. It's a variant of trans, okay, with the same meaning, but that's going to help you remember what contradictory. Dict means to say, right, or speak. Trans means across, so somebody's going to say or speak across or through you, with you, or you're going to be doing it together. So you're contradicting what somebody is saying. So does that make sense? So it will help you. But now look, 2 prefixes on this one, okay? Reindictments. See, it fits in with here, but now you're doing again with another suffix, and it's changing it a little bit, but this changes it quite a bit, okay? Dictionary. So what do you think about a dictionary? Somebody had to say and speak all of those words that are put down. Does that make sense? A contradictable. Same thing with here, the suffix is changing. Able to say or speak across and with somebody. So that's how you kind of can like break apart your words and understand really what does that mean? Because you know what each part of that word actually means, and then you just slide them together, okay? So jurisdiction, okay. So dict, you're saying or speaking. And this is T-I-O-N is a state of being, and jury. So this is my place. The police have their one section cannot take care of another section unless they decide to come together. But anyways, you hear that a lot in the law. Contradictorily, okay? Ly means how. How did this happen? Okay? Contradiction. Oh, benedictory. I thought this one was really good. So dict. Do you guys, dict, what does dict mean?
To say.
To say or speak. Very good, Daniel. But do you guys remember what bene means? It means good. So if you think about this, benedictory means it's the process of having a benediction. Do you guys know what the benediction is? You're saying a good thing to God. Okay? Predictable, able to say or say something in the future. Okay? Contradict. So we don't have suffixes on this. So now look how this one. Consonant, is there, you always look at the last 3 letters. Consonant, vowel, consonant. No, it's not. So if you immediately look at those last 3 letters, then you know right here that you don't have to worry about the doubling rule. You just add your suffixes on. See, boom. Contradicting, you're just adding them on. So this one's a little bit different though. Contradictious. O-U-S right here is a suffix. And when you're adding on O-U-S, when you hear us, because typically when we say us, you say U-S, but most of the time when it sits at the end of the word, you spell it O-U-S, even when it's not a suffix. But when it's a suffix, you absolutely know if you have a base word, you spell it O-U-S, but it stands for full of, abounding in, having, a contradictious attitude. Now, when you hear this though, you can spell this word because you can hear dict. You know your root is dict because you have a base word, contradict, right? I mean, you have your Latin root and your two prefixes, but still you can get it down to contradict. So now you know contradictious. This just turned into a digraph, and you can hear it. But you know this is going to be a TI because this is a T. Does that make sense, boys? And then you add on your OUS. Okay? So this could be a little bit tricky. You don't just leave the I off, because then it would say contradict us. And then it doesn't make sense. It doesn't just sound right. Contradictious. Can you hear the difference? Okay. Contradictors. So here you could just add them on. This is more than one person saying or speaking across us, with us together. Okay? So contradiction. So let's not have contradictions between us, right? So remember, you need to know how to spell these. You need to know how to spell your suffixes individually. Every single one of them. And it would be best to know the meaning. Okay? So especially at least the ones that we were talking about. There's going to be lots of them. But make sure that you are learning how to spell just your Latin root here. Okay? Spell your Latin roots. Identify your suffixes. Okay, now we've gone into another board, and we are going to focus on the root cred. What does cred mean, Daniel? Believe. Means to believe. Okay, so if you look at this word, credibleness. Ness means like a state of being or condition, able to give credit, or credit is believable. So this person is a believable person, okay? Credulous, it has a different meaning. It means, OUS means full of or abounding. So if you think about that, Daniel, if you think you're full of or abounding in cred, what would that mean?
Believe.
Yeah, you are full of, or maybe you're overzealous in believing something to be true, okay? Credibilities. Now this is one of those words when you're adding, you have cred, which is your accented syllable. You'll have a you'll have a couple of accented syllables in something like this, because typically your accent falls on the third syllable when you count 3 over, but your Latin root is almost always accented. Okay, so now something changes here. When you spell credible, C-R-E-D-I-B-L-E is how you spell it. But when you start adding all of these suffixes, especially itty, you have to change ibble around, and you have to put an I in front of the L. That's really interesting, don't you think? When you have to do that. Now, credit comes from the 19th century. And I couldn't find anything of what IT actually means, but it happened in England, and it just means that people could give things to somebody to pay it back. Okay? So basically, that's what credit means. You give, like a bank would loan some money, and then you have so much time to pay it back. So that's when it started. So that's kind of where that means. But it's still, you're going to give them money in a belief that you are going to get paid back. And that's what that means. You're believing in them to pay you back. So that's where that came up with. So incredulous. So it's same here. See how the prefix that gets just added on, it changes the whole meaning. Here you're very believable, but here, Daniel, you're not as believable, because in means not, or into. Here in this word, it would mean not. So you're going to have to kind of decide, is it going to be not, into, or in? Okay, good. So discredits means not or apart, and So discredits. When you think of discredits, what would that mean?
No credits. No, not believing.
Yeah, you're not, this information has now discredited you and you're not a believable, this is not believable. Okay, when you're using that word. Now, accredited, well, AC means what, Daniel?
Correct.
To, toward, or to send. So see how now AC, this is why you have two C's right here. One is for your prefix and one is for your root. Okay? And so if somebody is accredited, that means that they can now send this information to somebody and it's believable. Does that make sense? So let's say you're going to an accredited school. Well, okay, well, I'll believe your transcripts. Does that make sense? Accredited. You're going to now send the transcripts that because you are an accredited school. You're a believable school, okay? Now, incredibly. Well, in means not, into, or in. Incredibly, what would you think in this one would be? Not believably. So Daniel thinks it's not believably. I think this one would be into. Into, it's incredibly amazing. Can you see that when you actually use the word? Cred means believable. Into, it's into believing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How do we believe it? Incredibly. So ly means how. You should always remember that ly means how because it will help you place it as an adverb almost always. Sometimes they're adjectives, but almost always ly will be an adverb and it's going to be describing. And we'll go into all of that later. Credential. Okay, you have your credentials. Your information is believable. Overcredulous. That means over means too much. Too much believing, right? So now we have credibleness. Again, Daniel, what does credibleness mean? So we went over up here. What does it mean?
To believe.
Okay, you're able to believe. It's a state of being, right? Now, accreditation. TION is a state of being. You are now being sent to something, to, toward, to send. See how this has now changed. Double C's. Why are there two C's here?
Because one belongs to the prefix.
One prefix and one to the root. So that's why it's important to understand your Chamaeleon prefixes because it'll help you with your doubling rule, help you with your spelling because you're just putting one on top of the other, adding them on, adding them on. Accreditations. So see how you don't really change things here, you're just adding them on and then you always follow your spelling rules when you are adding on your suffixes or your unit sounds. There, sometimes you have to change things like this A. If you hear Asian, spell it A-T-I-O-N, okay? Incredibilities. So what do you think that means, Daniel? It's plural. Here, see, it almost looks like, see, it's the same as this, but here is everything to do with believing. Here is believing, but it's also plural. That's plural, okay? So see here, incredulous, but now look at this, Daniel. We're not doing us. This you is changing. Incredulities. In here is incredulous. So sometimes that happens when you're changing up the suffixes. Okay, so discrediting, what does discrediting mean? I mean, what does dis mean, Daniel?
Not.
Not. So, or it can mean apart, but here it would mean not crediting somebody. Okay, you don't believe them that they'll pay you back, or maybe you are making it so that this person is not believable because you're discrediting their word by saying something else. Okay, incredible. Okay, but in here, this one, in means what?
Into.
This one means into. Now remember, we talked about in another lesson, when you have a Latin root, most often it will probably be an IBLE instead of an ABLE, because IBLE sits on really, really old words, okay? So, incredible, it means into believing, okay? Able to believe, you're into it, all right? Now, I put this in here because this could be really tricky, because this looks like it's cred, but it's not. What's your base word in here? If it's massacred, what's your base word?
Curd.
Massacre.
Oh.
So this is the suffix ed added onto the word massacre. So this would not be the suffix, your Latin root, cred, okay? So be careful with some words that might be tricky. So if you can take off that D, if it's sitting at the end like that and you take off the D or the ED, really the D is what's going to mess you up. Then you know, well, maybe that's not the Latin root. Okay? So listen to this. Massacred. What happened here? What sound do you hear at the end right here, Daniel?
Duh.
Duh. So we have three sounds that the suffix ed can say, and it says d, t, and ed. But we'll go into another lesson and talk about why. But that's really important for you to understand why, and it will help your spelling intensely with your suffix ed. Sacredy. Sacredy. So cred is your believing. These things are sacred. It's believable. Okay, sacred. See how this one is sitting at the end, but it's a suffix. But this one is sitting at the end, and it is the Latin root. Do you see that, D? How that could be a little bit confusing. Sacredness, a state or a condition of being sacred. Okay, credential, cred, credentialed. See how this turned to the D sound? We didn't say credentialed. We didn't say credentialed. We said credentialed, massacred. See how that ED can trip you up. And so now we have credit. So it just has the IT at the end. So it's really important that you should know how to spell credit. It means you're believable. You understand. Now, aqua. Or aqua, okay, means water. Aquarial, this is actually a British word, and we have aquarium in the American language, and it's the same meaning, where it's a dish holding water, okay? But this can be really confusing. So this word is super tricky. Now you have the AQU in there, but this word is a French word, and this says maquis. And so you have to be really careful with the AQU, and that's why I pulled it out, is because this can be incredibly confusing. Well, is this my Latin root, or is this part of a French word? Okay, so how this also, you would know that this is French, is because of the S. S sitting at the end, if they're not saying anything, if you're saying a word and you're like, ooh, that's not really, it doesn't make sense, there's a reason, but S's don't say anything at the very end oftentimes when it's a French word. So, maquis. Aqua. So this is aquas, and this is plural for water. See how this one says aquarial, and this one says acquaint. So this one has the O sound, and this one has the schwa sound. Aquarial, acquaint. Okay, so when you have a French word, and I put this in here because AQU, you would think, oh man, that's water, but it's not. This, if you have AQUE, especially if it's sitting at the end of a word, you most likely have a French word. QUE says k. It just says the k sound, and it's saying, oh, I'm French. Okay, so this is clack. It's a closed syllable right here. You wouldn't think that, but this QU is the QUE is a digraph. Even though digraphs say it stands for 2 letters making one sound, you can have 3 letters and call this a digraph. Okay, so this is making one sound. The QU are not vowels in this one. It's just the k sound. So this is a closed syllable. It's going to make this a short, and it's going to say clack. Okay, so now we're going to identify this. AQUE. If you see that, especially sitting at the end of a word, but you can have suffixes sitting onto that, but if you can take off those suffixes and you're like, wow, this is a real word. So clack means to clap, or you're heckling an audience or something like that. So if you see that, it's most likely French and not your Latin root for water, okay? So here's another example, plaque, like the plaque you get off of your teeth. Okay, and also I thought I'd put in here, if you see IQUE, which doesn't really fit with that, but I still wanted you to, IQUE says eek. Okay, that I in front of it will say eek, eek. So that is French, like examples, antique, feek. This right here is a closed syllable, 1-syllable word. And this is the accented syllable here. And then we have teak here, okay? All right, so I actually forgot this part, even though it was in the video. I skipped it and I felt it needed to be put in. So, or I would have this already posted on YouTube. But anyways, we are going over fract. And what does fract mean, Dan?
To break.
It means to break. Okay, so refracted means again. So this is past tense. ED means it's past tense. It's breaking again. Now we have infractors. See, we have a prefix here, a Chamaeleon prefix that can go on lots of different roots. Okay, so we have that's added on. We have our Latin root to break, fract. We have our plural S and OR in this word means a person. Okay, so infractors, infractor. Now we have another Chamaeleon. See how we have a double F right here. Okay, so now we have DIF, what does DIF mean? Not, okay. So not diffraction. So a state of being broken apart. Okay. DIF also so DIF means not or apart. So a state of being broken apart. So fractionated, past tense, you're adding that suffix on, and fraction, here's another suffix. And you're dropping the E and adding your past tense ED, fractionated. See how you hear the ed here in this one. Fractionate, they're similar. So now right here you have fract, and you have us, means full of or abounding, or you have to have. So now the TI, remember with OUS, if you hear sh, you know it's going to be a TIOUS. How are they going to act? Fractiously. The LY means how. Refractometric. Now remember, you have to be careful with your O's. Now if you have ick, or what really matters with this O is the suffix here. What makes that change a little bit. Fracture, a break in your bone. Fraction, if you think about 1/2 or 1/3 or 3/4, it's a break in whatever that fraction is in that whole number. It's a break. Diffract, so this means not or apart. Infract, into the break. refractometer. See how this one right here is saying ah, and this one is saying more of a refractometer. So you have to be careful with those. If you see the IC, oftentimes this will be a softer O sound, but this one is refracta. You can really hear that. To see, Daniel, what does spect mean?
To see.
To see. So we have spectrum. We are seeing. Spectacles. We see with our spectacles, right? Spectacular. We're seeing something amazing. Inspection. What do you think about that? Inspection. This is a state of being. In means, in this word, inspection, into, exactly, Daniel. This one means into, so they're going in to see something. You have an inspection, they're coming to see. Inspectors, now you have plural, added on, another suffix, added on, you have a prefix, added on. See, now look at your spelling rule. Right off the bat, you need to check for spelling rules if you're not sure about the spelling. Check right here. There's no Y, there's no consonant, vowel, consonant, there's no E, you just add them on. That's easy when that happens, okay? So, but then you have to check for the next one. And then you check for the next one. Okay, so we have a suffix here, S, we have a suffix here. This means right here, a person in this word. It can mean three things, but in this word it means a person who sees into something, okay? So you can kind of break it apart, and I like to work my words from this way to this way off. Respect, okay. Spect means you're seeing somebody. You're seeing somebody again. Re means again. You're respecting that person, okay? You're seeing them again. Okay, respecting. Now we're going to just add on our ing. Now we're progressing. We're constantly seeing that person again. We're respecting that person, okay? Now, inspector, see now we changed from plural to one inspector. See how it changes the word a tad bit. Spectra, inspect, see it changed it. So this one actually is a knockoff from this one. Can you see that, D? In spectrum, in spectrum, in spectra with colors. Inspect. So now we're going to inspect something. See how it changes its position in your sentence. We are going to inspect the house with one inspector or many inspectors. It changes it. We will inspect the house with many inspectors, or maybe only one inspector will show up. And I hope the inspection, the state of being seen into, will turn out well. Okay? So respect, so we only have, I hope you have lots of respect for those ones that you love and treat them with respect. You see them over and over again in a good light. Okay? Respectable, able to respect somebody, to see somebody. Okay? So this says spectacles, spectacled. So that means, can you hear that? What happened here? Spectacled on the D, on the ED. It just says D. Okay, we'll talk about that. Remember that it does that, spectacled. Okay, it means you have received your spectacles, okay? Or you've been put into glasses or whatever. Inspects. This is going into being able to see something plurally. More than one time. There's more than one happening to be able to see. Prospector. This is a person who sees something out in the field. All right? Now, I actually wanted to put this mida in earlier, but I actually skipped it altogether, and I'm glad I didn't. So mida means what? Middle, nice. It's exactly how it sounds. It's in the middle. midi, middle. So we also have mid that will go on a prefix. But this is a Latin root right here, midi. Mid will go on lots of words like midbrain. It's in the middle of something. So that might help you with midi, a timid person. It's in the middle of being shy. A midden, humidity. Okay? It's in the middle of being in the air. Okay? We have midi. It's in the middle of the air, right? Humidify. So you're putting moisture in the air. Now we have dehumidifying. You're in the process, right? You're moving, you're progressing. This ing means progressing. D means down and away. So dehumidifying, you're taking away, you're taking it down. You want to get rid of the moisture that's in the air. Midionette, this immediately tells you this is attached to a French word. So we have Latin connected to French right here, okay? And this is somebody that works in a sewing room, with kind of an assistant. This means small too, okay? And you're right, Daniel. Thymidine. So now also, remember, you know that this is probably not an English word because it has the Y here in the middle of a word, and you can identify your Latin root, so most likely this I and E will say "een." Is that helpful, Daniel? Thymidine. Okay. Okay, one of our viewers had a question. His name is Nilton, and I'm going to read the question. I did not quite understand the rule that turns the vowel into schwa when it's the third syllable and not accented. So we're going to talk about that. And I thought it'd be easier to address this in a video than try to get it out in word form. So now we have a 3-syllable word, and I chose words that it does not have Latin roots because all of these ones that we're focusing are the Latin roots. And when you're talking about accents, you know almost always that the Latin root is accented, whether it's going to be in the 5th syllable, the 3rd syllable, the last syllable. Most likely the Latin root will be the accented syllable, which tells you, when you can figure that out, it tells you what vowels will turn to schwa. That's why it's really important for you to understand what open syllables are and what closed syllables are, because those are the main syllables that turn your vowels to schwa. Okay, so now let's go ahead this word into syllables. Here. So what's this word, Dan?
Banana.
Oh gosh, that's so funny. Okay, so here, when you have a 3-syllable word, you know that the very end syllable, actually when you have 3 or more syllables, you know the very end syllable almost always. I'm sure there are some exceptions to the rule, but I would just plan on the last syllable not ever being accented in a 3 or more syllable word. So when you have a 3-syllable word, you can have the accent here, or you can have the accent here. So let's actually break. Can you see that really well, Dan?
Yeah.
I can't write though, it's so low. One in the middle, and you bring it to the end, but then it doesn't make sense. So we're going to take it over here. So you just kind of play with your word if you don't know the word. So, and we have one in the middle here, and it comes to the end. So now, how do we know that which one's accented or not? If you don't know the word, play with the word. And if you actually do know English and you're trying to read, but you don't know the word, you can actually really figure out your words by using this technique. Okay, so we broke apart our syllables. We know that this is a closed syllable, this is opened, and this is opened. Now, let's go over the rules. Open syllables that are not accented say the schwa sound. Open syllables that are accented say the long A sound, or their long sound. Okay, we're going to talk about A's right now. So now we have we have closed A's and O's that are not accented say the schwa sound. Now closed A's and O's that are accented will say it's short sound, because closed says it's short sound. When you close in a letter, it forces it to be short. When you open a letter, it forces it to be long, but not in the unaccented syllables. All right, so now this is open, so which one's accented? It's either going to be this one or this one. We know this one will not be accented because it is at the end and it is an open syllable. So it's going to say We know that because open A's say at the end of words. They're not accented, okay? So which one's going to be accented here? So you might just have to play with your word, because not always do we know that. It's probably a 50-50 chance of which ones. So right here, let's just decode the word. And we say, let's say this is going to be the accented syllable, banana. Well, that doesn't make sense, so switch them. Then we'll say banana. Now this really helps with your spelling too, because when you're okay, well, I know what a banana is, so break it. You can hear where it breaks, where your syllables. It says ba. Well, only open A's most of the time, there's exceptions, say So you say ba, well, you can't put a U there because it will say boo. So you want to put an A there. Open A, say so ba. That's how you would know to spell it with an A. And then nan, this is the accented syllable, so you know you just spell it N-A-N. Inordinate. 4-syllable word. And we're okay, so we know that this goes together because it's a silent E. So we have our vowels. So we're gonna put N-A-T-E. All right? So now let's go to the next one. We have our vowels, and you have an OR here next to a consonant. So you know that that R is going to stay together. So you can go D, I, and we know the OR goes together. It's a vowel R syllable because it's followed by a consonant. And then you have a suffix right here. I mean a prefix right here, okay? And we go I-N. So how do we know which one's accented? Okay, well, we know it's not going to be the end, because if it's bigger, it's 3 or more, it's not going to be the end. It's just not. Okay, so we know it's going to be either this one or this one. And what will help you with that? It is this one, and this one would be a really hard one to figure out if it is accented or not, because you don't really have to worry about it as much with the accent here to figure out your schwa. But you know it's not going to be this one. So if it's 4 or more, it's going to be sitting, the accent will probably still sit in the, so we have inordinate. So we have a prefix, this is your accented syllable. But what helps you to also figure out what's the accented syllable? This sounds like it lasts longer. So if you can hear that it lasts longer, then that is most likely the accented syllable. Okay, it's most likely the accented syllable if you can figure that out. But this will help you really with your schwa, for you to help understand a 3-syllable word. So I thought this was really interesting when I was editing. I thought I would add this to this clip right here. So we had credit with A-B-L-E and incredible with I-B-L-E, and we had a lesson on this, and remediable with A-B-L-E. And when do we use A-B-L-E and I-B-L-E is really difficult to figure out. But we learned that with I-B-L-E, it's on really old words that sit on Latin roots. Well, this one sits kind of on a Latin root. It looks like it is. But if you can remember that credit, the word credit, was originated, which means believe, it was originated from the Latin root, and then the IT was put onto it. This happened in the 19th century. So this is not a really old word. But this is a really old word. All right, and this remediable must not be, even though it's sitting on a Latin word, this is not a really old word. So this word must have come about later after these words, this like a word like this. Anyways, that's it. Okay, what's your root in here? Tract. Okay, I actually think this is kind of a fun one because tract means what?
To pull.
To pull or to draw. What does the AT mean? It's going to sit in the AD section. Toward, to send, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to pull, draw somebody to you, toward you, because you want to attract them to you, right? I think that is, and then you have your suffix, your prefix. Now we have a double T here because why? This is where you're spelling.
One belongs to the prefix and one belongs to
the root. Okay, good, because one belongs to the prefix and one belongs to the root. Help with your doubling letters. That is key to doubling your letters properly. Okay, so now we have spect. Very good. So spectrum. How about this one? Where's your root here? Fract. Very good. Refracted. You're going to break it apart again. Oh, did you hear what happened to this ED right here? What did it say? Ed. Refracted. Okay, so now tell me where your root here.
Dest.
No.
Trucked.
Close. Struct.
Oh.
Okay, what does struct mean? To build. So struct, okay, so that's why it's so important. So to build, D means to take, to wipe away. So this means destruct ability. That means you take it down. You're wiping away the building, or whatever somebody's built up. You're wiping it away. Okay, what about here? Cred. Credibleness. What about here? Bibble. Okay. For Bible, how about here? What's your root here? Oh, what does this Bibble mean?
Oh, Bible.
No, okay.
Book.
Bibble means book. Okay, we have mit. So it means to send. All right? Mit means to send. Now remember, MIT switches to MIS when you're adding on stuff. What's that?
Ditty.
What is your root here?
Oh. Midi.
Okay? That's your root. It's in the middle. Timidity. Okay? How about, where's your root here?
Agua.
Right here, right at the beginning. AQU. Aquarial. How about, where's your, what's the root here? Dict. Okay? Prediction. What does dict mean again?
To say.
What?
To say.
To say. Nice, very good. To say or to speak. Okay, so now look at these. I actually meant to put these in green. What's your root here, boys?
Which one?
Meant.
Nope, that's your suffix. Frag. What does frag mean again?
Broke.
To break.
To break.
Okay, so fragmentize. You're breaking it apart, right? Fragment is a piece. Okay, fragmentary. See how you can use these same and then add suffixes on to your word. If they're coming this way, you're adding suffixes on. Follow the spelling rule. When you're doing prefixes, you can just add them on. That's why you have double letters with prefixes. Okay? But you also can have double letters with your suffixes. You just need to make sure you're following the rule. Fragmentarily. So ly means how. That is going to be so important when you start putting in and understanding your adverbs and what words they describe in a sentence. Okay? They can mean adjectives, but most likely not. Ossifrage, where is your root
Right.
there? Right there.
Right.
So also, even though this says ij, you still have something here that is your root and it will break it apart. Because age can also be a suffix, but not in this word. We'll see you in the next lesson.